If you're driven by an adventurous heart, you're in luck. The 2021 Subaru Outback shares your spirit. With standard symmetrical all-wheel drive plus up to 33 miles per gallon. An available 260 horsepower turbocharged engine, advanced technology, and an available extra-large touchscreen. The best Outback ever. The 2021 Subaru Outback. Go where love takes you.
Lisa.
Cliffs will never be the same. Sea kayaking in Ireland. Hi, my name is Cynthia Donovan. I took a recent trip to the northern coast of Ireland for sea kayaking, as well as a bit of touring down along the western coast, and I'm inspired to share that travel with you. I wanted to go to Ireland for two main reasons. One, I'm Irish, 85% DNA Irish. So I wanted to visit the Emerald Isles. I'd never been there in spite of spending a life traveling for work. Secondly, I have been building up skills in sea kayaking, and I saw these incredible videos of sea kayakers going around the entire island of Ireland, and it inspired me to think about going and visiting the cliffs and the caves and everything they showed along in these videos. I am not an expert paddler, however. I have been paddling all my life. I've paddled canoes and kayaks since I was a child. In the past 15 years, I've taken up more seriously the kayaking and accumulating both skills and boats. As Jerry Vandiver loves to say, no such thing as too many boats. So I've built up these skills, and I wanted to be able to use them and test and challenge myself. And this trip to Ireland just seemed like the right thing to do just that. Now, I'll cover in this video both some of the preparations and logistics, what we did in terms of skills building, but then what I really want to share with you is the joy on the water and the beautiful scenery that we had, whether we were sea kayaking or later while I was doing my touring. And then I'll talk a bit at the end about what I hope you gain from this video in terms of a sense of adventure. So next we'll go on to where, who, and other logistics of this fabulous trip. Our destination was Dunfanaghy, along the northern coast of Ireland. It's way up in County Donegal. It's very near the border with Northern Ireland. It has various launch sites. The Power of Water has gone there several times, and so they have identified great launch sites to use, depending upon the weather and the tides. So we were in very good hands in terms of figuring out where within this vast region, this long coastline, where to go and where the sites were. Personnel. There were two groups of paddlers. Group one went from August 16th to the 23rd. I was in group two that went from August 24th to September 1st. There was a team of three from the Power of Water, and we had an expert sea kayaker, Irish guide, James O'Donnell, who was key personnel in this journey. I'll talk a bit about my preparation. To prepare, I participated in the Great Lakes Sea Kayak Symposium in Grand Marais, Michigan in July 2019, and then again in July 2021. These symposia are great for learning skills, practicing them, working with a bunch of skilled coaches, but also meeting other excellent paddlers. Great event to attend. I then practiced skills in my strokes and some of the distance paddling on Pelican Lake in northern Minnesota, as well as during various paddles with the Lansing Oar and Paddle Group, my local meetup group here in Lansing, Michigan. This was during the period of COVID. I took a COVID test within 72 hours of flying to Ireland. It wasn't required, but I wanted to be sure. But Ireland was requiring proof of vaccination to enter the country, as well as to enter in any enclosed spaces. So vaccinations were required for participation in this travel. We did all stay safe. Now I'll talk about the logistics. Each participant arranged their own air travel to Ireland, to Dublin. We also all brought our own paddles, PFDs, and spray skirts, dry suits, and optional wear neoprene for some, safety gear such as paddle floats, dry bags for lunches and spare clothing. We all needed helmets and headlamps, and you'll see the reason for the helmets and headlamps in the coming presentation. Everyone brought with them smiles, enthusiasm, and flexibility to respond to the conditions and recognize where and when we could or might not be able to go. I highly coach you all to pack very carefully when you're packing paddles. I managed to take two-piece paddles and make them into two four-piece paddles thanks to baggage handling. I was very fortunate that another paddler had an extra paddle that I was able to use, which was fundamental for enjoying the trip. Thank you very much, Kelly. Now, for the travel to Ireland, here's what was included, provided by the Power of Water. In addition to transport from Dublin around Donegal and back, they provided the housing. They had rental housing and most meals. Trey Rouse was an excellent chef. They did the shopping. We had breakfast and lunch fixings that we'd put together each day. The kayaks, James O'Donnell with his company Sea Kayaking Donegal was able to provide all the Dagger kayaks that we use, solo kayaks. We did skills development with Power of Water coaches, and Power of Water provided us a COVID test kit for return travel, since for the United States you're required to have that test, a negative test prior to boarding the airplane, at least at that time. We did skill building in Ireland. This wasn't a symposium as such, but we still had a chance to work on our skills with excellent coaches. We practiced a bit on the open water crossings. We did caves and rock gardening and worked on our skills maneuvering these long kayaks through narrow channels. We practiced self and assisted rescues, and that was great for team building because you want to paddle as a team, watch out for each other. We did surfing, and there was coaching available for some of the surfing periods, and that was great. You'll see my surfing skills are highly limited, so it was fun, but I have a long way to go. We also worked on mastering steam stern rudders and other keystrokes along the way, and there was other coaching available whenever we wanted it. It was available, but this was not primarily designed as an instructional course. There was a very low ratio of participants to coaches. Given that there were 7 participants and 3 coaches, we were in very good hands. Now this is a view that I typically have of cliffs, namely I'm a long way from the edge of the cliff. There's a lot of heather out in front of me, and then there's the cliff, and then there's beautiful water. By the end of this trip, I was getting a lot closer to the edge of that cliff to be able to enjoy and see. And so by the end, we were paddling under the cliffs, exploring and enjoying. It met my aspirations to lose some of my fear of cliffs. And here here's a video from Gary Balint demonstrating his stern ruddering and demonstrating why you might want to master that before going through some of these narrow channels. And here we'll have a sense of what it's like to be using all of your paddling skills and whatever's available to get through narrow channels. As you could tell, we were all enjoying ourselves, regardless of how things happened. Now, I'd like to talk a bit about the paddling and landing along the cliffs. As we paddled each day, we always had a lunch break. We spent much of the time paddling along the sides. I would paddle a little further away from the rocks than some of the other paddlers, given my skill set. We dashed in between rocks and continued paddling along the shore, always keeping in sight of each other. We'd find a lovely lunch spot. This was one of our first lunch spots. As you can see, the waterfall in the background. We took turns going in to the lunch spot one by one. We all fit. James knew many of these lunch spots, as did Scott and Trey from previous trips. It all depended on the tides and the water. As you can see, this was a very calm day, so landing was fairly easy in this spot. The waterfall made a very picturesque spot to have our lunch, and the kayaks were neatly tucked away under the rocks at low tide. So now landing wasn't always quite so easy, even though the seas looked so calm, and it looks like it should be a piece of cake landing on these shores. James O'Donnell was here in these slides to help get each of us in, our Irish guide, who was fabulous, and so I'll let you watch this particular landing, and then the walrus landing that follows.
Yeah, wait for that one. Yep. Stop. There you go. Perfect. Paddle, paddle, paddle. Coming in now. Just get it out.
I may have had some trouble getting upright, but thanks to James, it worked out fine, and I still had a smile afterwards. Some of the lunch spots had great views, and you could explore up towards the cliffs and get around. Many of the lunch spots we had to land the boats, maybe where in high tide it wouldn't have worked, but in the tides we experienced, it was perfect timing. At any rate, the time to talk and relax, hang around and explore at the end of each lunch period was an excellent way to break the day into two pieces for all of us. Now we come to some of the favorite parts: the caves, the trails, the arches, and the rock gardening all along the way. We had a blast. Each time we went out, we could choose where we paddle according to our own skill levels, but always having someone at our back or watching someone else's back as they tried things. Oftentimes we would do the map the world along the edges of the cliffs and then under the arches. We explored each according to their own level, and when I waded back, people were always watching out and making sure I was still okay. Here, I'll just let you experience some of the ups and downs of the water and the arches and the cliffs. You can tell that wasn't me taping this particular video. I'm not someone who's going to lean back and look up at the top of the arches like Scott does. I don't like those whirly beds. Sometimes we'd venture into caves and go to the end of them. Sometimes we could see light at the end of the tunnel, so we knew that it was a trail that would come in one side of a cliff and go out the other side. And some of those were very long trails. We all had helmets and we had headlights of differing quality. Mine wasn't so good, but Scott had a great headlight. So we're going to watch this video and let Scott take us through this long trail.
There's definitely some up and down. Okay, ready to go.
Okay.
And definitely some up and down in here, but it's not super pushy.
I hope no one got seasick with that one. As Scott said, the water was a bit pushy. We had lots of ups and downs. There was a lot of paddle banging once we were all going through, but it was a great under cliff trail. We always had someone on our backs when we would go into caves and make sure that everyone was safe, which was great. James often was our sacrificial lamb going in to explore things, as now, to see if a cave was accessible and also make sure of no seal pups. it was great to have someone who would explore. When we came out of these caves, obviously the sunlight hit us, and it was great to be out in the sunlight, but we retained that enthusiasm having been in a cave and wandered around and heard the waves slapping. Just a joy. So now we get a chance to see some of the coming out of the caves and these awesome cliffs once again. It was always great to come out into the sunlight, and always, as you can see, with lots of smiles. Next, we'll have a chance to look at some of the expert pour-over paddling skills of some of the participants.
Yeah! That was great.
That was Thorsten showing off a bit of his skills. And now here's Gary trying to do a double pour-over.
Oh! Yay!
Nicely done, Gary. We had two different opportunities to go surfing during this 5 days on the water. Neither day had huge waves, but it was still challenging for me. As you can see, Mrs. Kathy had a blast. She goes to Baja, Mexico and does some surfing. So surfing in a sea kayak was one of the things she had such a joy doing. And now we'll take a look at how Trey does his styling surfing. That looks so easy and elegant when Trey does it. Now, let's take a look when I give it a try.
There you go. It worked.
As you can see, it doesn't take a lot of wave to make me a happy person when I'm successfully cresting the waves. It was a blast, even if the waves weren't all that great. And here we can't end surfing without seeing the next ride. This is Nate giving us a show of his oh-so-classy ride. The coordinated dry suit and kayak, along with the yellow helmet, were oh so stylish. It was great kayaking with the gang. Now we'll turn to a brief look at the weather, the wildlife, and the rocks we experienced during this travel. As you have seen in the previous photographs, the Irish weather was gorgeous while we were there. Most of the days were sunny. The winds were not particularly high, and it was beautiful. Occasionally cloudy. The temperatures were quite comfortable. We wore mostly dry suits out on the water due to the water temperature, and I did not get overheated. A few people would dip their heads down in to chill off. But it was beautiful, beautiful weather. I can imagine anyone visiting again may not experience all of those sunny days in a row. And the more adventurous among us probably weren't very happy with all these calm seas when they wanted to challenge rough seas. But there were so many beautiful sights, nobody was unhappy, and there were plenty of other challenges and places to explore. One of the things we did was did some kayaking tourist adventure, and that took us to Doe Castle in the kayaks in Sheephaven Bay. This was a fortress built in the 1420s, and I'll talk more about it in a minute. Sheephaven Bay, the inlet where the castle was full of kelp. And you can't talk about plant life in this area without talking about kelp, and a lot of it. As you can see, we came into this bay to go up to the castle, and we noticed we had to get out of our kayaks and leave them in the kelp and trudge up through the muck, trying to keep our boots on our feet, which wasn't always that easy. But we stayed upright. Nobody ended up plunked in the muck and the kelp. And we wandered up to the actual castle, and the cemetery was there. This fortress was built around 1420, and for a long time was the home of the McSweeney chiefs. It changed hands through the centuries, and finally in 1934 it was declared a national monument. In the 1990s, the townhouse, that big structure up above, underwent substantial renovation. And now you can just walk around the grounds for free. There are no tours right now, but that's because of COVID. But it was a nice little respite. While we were wandering up above, the tide started receding. And when we got back to the kayaks, they were thoroughly settled in the kelp. So the trek to haul the boats out to the water and get back in them began. Coming from the Midwest, I wasn't paying attention to the tides. That's part of weather, and I should have been, and at least someone else was looking out for us and got us down there. On the way back to our put-in, we had to weave around some newly created sandbars as the tide continued going out in Sheephaven Bay. So, as I mentioned, lots of kelp and other aquatic plant life was visible along the way. Jellyfish were all over the place, and we were fortunate to have Scott Faraday use his GoPro to do some underwater filming of the sea life. You can find that on his YouTube channel. Some really nice photography there. In addition, there were a bunch of mammals. I say birds, there were a lot of birds. I didn't find a great shot of any of the birds, mostly cormorants and gulls. But there was a seal that came to visit us one day at one of our lunch spots. We must have been in his or her territory, as it stuck around the whole time and followed us after just to make sure we got out of the way. There were seal pups in some of the caves, and we tried to avoid disturbing them. Of course, Ireland is indeed full of sheep. They walk around as if they own the roads, and the owners mark them to be able to identify the members of their own flocks. When we were there in County Mayo, we found that team spirit was everywhere, including a bunch of ducks in team colors. The all-Gaelic football match was being held after we left, and the Mayo Club hadn't won since 1951, hence the painted ducks. Did these ducks help the cause? Apparently not enough, as the Mayo team lost once again in the All-Gaelic Football Championship. You can't talk about the cliffs without also looking down at your feet and looking at all the rocks that are down below. There were beautiful rocks, and Kathy loved stopping and capturing some of the combinations of rocks lodged in with the boulders, and I just love this small smiling face. At least I think it's a smiling face. After the paddling wrapped up, I did some moto touring, both with a guide and on my own, driving through the narrow roads along the western coastlands of Ireland. I started up in County Donegal and made it down to the Dingle Peninsula before heading back to Dublin to fly home. Having 85% Irish DNA in a recent blood test, I decided it really was time to enjoy this incredible country. So you can find the ancient here. You can find caves that were magnificent in terms of stalactites and stalagmites, etc. Along the coastline, I'd stop, I'd peer over the edges, I'd look out at islands. It was an amazing trip, both by myself and with the guides. Here you can see off towards the sunset where the seas were so gorgeous, and I began getting closer and closer to the edge of cliffs and began to start looking down and thinking, ooh, that would be nice to paddle around, or, oh, I think there's a cave over there. So I started losing that fear of cliffs that I talked about at the beginning. Now, when I think of the cliffs, I think of the majestic beauty, but I also think of down there, down at the base, there might be some fabulous paddling along the way. One of the things in my heritage, my ancestors came over during the potato famine, and so we visited a famine village at one point, and one of the things we saw was a shebeen still. They make a very strong, hard alcohol, and we had a taste of that, which was took the breath away, shall we say. We visited a pub later, and I did a couple of pubs on my own, but due to pandemic restrictions, there was no live music in any of the pubs. In fact, one night I actually was seated on a table on the bandstand, which was really very sad. So I definitely have to go back and get some of the Irish music. In the meantime, O'Sullivan's Courthouse Pub in Dingle has a Facebook page and does live Irish music on Sundays, so you can check that out. The Irish are very proud of American film references. Things like Star Wars. Various parts of the most recent Star Wars were shot off the Irish coast at Skellig Michael and some other places. Malin Head was one of the scenes. The place I stayed in on the Dingle Peninsula and Benferrity was actually where the staff members for Star Wars stayed when they were filming that film. Another one that my guide just chose, he said, you have to come see this. We went to see the schoolhouse and the bridge that were made famous by The Quiet Man, a movie from the 50s with John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. They were very proud of that, and I had watched The Quiet Man before leaving for Ireland, so it brought smiles to see these tourist spots. Now for some final thoughts. It was a great trip to Ireland, as you can see. So many smiles, so many great people on the trip. As the title said, I will never look at cliffs again in the same way. They are awesome, and now I will peer over that cliff and check it out and see what's down below, what I might be able to paddle and what I probably shouldn't be paddling. I challenged myself on this trip, and I was encouraged by the people on the trip to continue challenging myself. And I had some of those whoopee moments, and I had some of those, oh, no, I'm not doing that one, thank you. And it was a small enough group we could adapt and adjust to each of our needs, which was a benefit of traveling with such a small, welcoming group. It was a great coaching team. The combination of James O'Donnell from Ireland with the Power of Water team and the support crew Power of Water had, so that we were all comfortable and happy and eating well, was great. Ireland is just a country with amazing beauty, and we really need to work to keep it that way and to share that beauty, whether it's through videos, through photographs, through books, or through visits ourselves. All I can say is I will return to some of these incredible, beautiful places where I have been and the future ones that I look forward to finding. So thanks to the Power of Water, Trey Rouse, Scott Faraday, and Nathan Williams. All the videos were by Scott Faraday and Gary Baylant. You can check out some great underwater video that Scott did while in Donegal on his YouTube channel. James O'Donnell is seakayakingdonegal.com, and you can see some more video from James on his channel, on his YouTube channel, yes. And then our music is thanks to Jerry Vandiver and Caitlin Evenson with a Irish traditional song, The Water is Wide. And thanks to the other participants from the group. Having a great group just made it wonderful. Many thanks go to Loretta Rupi for her invaluable assistance in designing and producing this presentation, and to Catherine Hurd and Kelly Adams, who contributed excellent photos, as well as the videographers mentioned in the previous slide. All errors remaining, however, are mine. So may the road rise up to meet you, may the wind always be at your back, and may the sun shine warm upon your face. Take care.